Survey vessel Whisper of Stars drifted through the outer reaches of an unremarkable yellow star system, its sensors sweeping across the cosmic void with the methodical patience of a species that had measured time in millennia rather than years. Navigator First Class Velthoron adjusted his cranial membranes, filtering the endless stream of data that flowed through his consciousness like a gentle river of information. "Another barren system," muttered Science Officer Crixana from her station, her bioluminescent patches flickering with the faded purple of boredom. 17 planetary bodies, most too close or too far from the stellar mass for liquid water. The usual disappointment. Velthoron hummed in agreement, his throat sacs vibrating with the harmonics of casual conversation. They had been assigned to this sector of the galaxy for 300 rotations now, mapping the unexplored regions that the Galactic Concordance had long ignored. The outer spiral arm was considered a wasteland, a cosmic backwater where stars burned alone and life, if it existed at all, would be primitive beyond consideration. "Wait," Crixana said, her patches suddenly flaring bright yellow with surprise. "I'm detecting something anomalous on the third planet." Define anomalous. Atmospheric composition unlike anything in our databases. Nitrogen-oxygen mix with trace elements of... This can't be right. Her manipulator appendages flew across the holographic interface. I'm reading industrial compounds, refined hydrocarbons, radioactive isotopes that don't occur naturally. Velthoron felt his secondary heart begin to pulse. In all his years of service, he had never encountered such readings outside of concordance space. "Are you suggesting?" "I am not suggesting anything yet, but these readings indicate technological activity, recent technological activity." Crixana turned her optical clusters toward him, and he could see his own shock reflected in her compound eyes. "Navigator, I believe we've found a civilization." The words hung in the recycled air of the survey vessel like a physical presence. Discovery of new sapient species was rare, perhaps 1 or 2 per millennium across the entire galaxy. The Galactic Concordance comprised 47 member species, each one discovered over the course of 100,000 years of expansion. Finding a new civilization was the kind of event that defined careers, that wrote names into the eternal records of history. "Set course for the third planet," Velthoron commanded, his voice steady despite the trembling of his appendages. "And prepare a priority transmission to Concordance Central. They need to know about this immediately." The Whisper of Stars turned its prow toward the blue-green marble that hung in the darkness, a jewel of color in the void. Neither Velthoron nor Crixana could have imagined that this moment would mark the end of everything the galaxy had ever known. The first detailed scans of Earth arrived at Velthoron's station like a cascade of impossible data. He stared at the readings, ran them through verification protocols, ran them again, and then sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. "Crixana," he said, finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come look at this." She floated over, her movement tentacles propelling her through the zero-gravity environment with practiced ease. As her eyes processed the information on his display, her bioluminescent patches began cycling through colors in a pattern he had never seen before. A physiological response to shock so profound that her body couldn't settle on a single emotional state. "This is wrong," she said. "This must be sensor malfunction." "I've run 17 verification protocols. The data is accurate." "Then the data is impossible." On the display before them, Earth rotated slowly in a false color representation, its surface annotated with thousands of data points. Population centers glowed like angry red wounds across the continental masses. Infrastructure networks spiderwebbed across the globe in patterns of bewildering complexity. And everywhere, the signatures of technology burned bright against the planetary surface. 8 billion, Crixana breathed. 8 billion individual life forms of the sapient species on one planet. Velthorin nodded slowly. With no colony worlds, no orbital habitats, no expansion beyond their home system. That's not possible. No species could sustain those numbers on a single world. The resource depletion alone would... And yet, there they are. They stared at the data in silence. In all of Concordance history, no species had ever exceeded 2 billion individuals on their homeworld before expanding to colony worlds. The ecological mathematics simply didn't allow for it. Resources depleted. Ecosystems collapsed. Civilizations either expanded or died. It was a law as fundamental as gravity. But these creatures, these humans, as their intercepted communications seemed to call themselves, had somehow crammed 8 billion sapient beings onto a single planet and continued to exist. Not just exist, thrive. Their communications networks pulsed with activity. Their cities blazed with light. Their vehicles, primitive by concordant standards, but vehicles nonetheless, swarmed across the surface in countless millions. "There's more," Velthorin said, pulling up additional data. "Look at this." The display shifted to show biological scans. Crixana leaned closer and then jerked back as if struck. "Their biochemistry." "Yes." "They're carbon-based, water-dependent, standard parameters, but their cellular structure." "They repair themselves," Velthorin said, "spontaneously, continuously. Their bodies are in a constant state of regeneration and decay, cells dying and being replaced on a cycle measured in days. And when they suffer injury..." He pulled up a medical record they had intercepted from what appeared to be a planetary data network. It showed images of a human who had suffered catastrophic trauma, burns covering most of its body, bones shattered, organs failing. The subsequent images showed the same human recovered, walking, functioning, living. "That should have been fatal," Crixana said. "That would have been fatal for any concordant species, even the Hrath, and they're the most durable organisms we've ever encountered." "It gets worse. Or better, I'm no longer certain which." Velthorin's manipulators trembled as he pulled up more data. "They don't hibernate. They don't enter dormancy cycles. They're active constantly. Well, they do have a rest period they call sleep, but it's brief. 6 to 8 hours out of every 24-hour rotation. That means they're conscious for 16 hours straight, every day. Every day, for their entire lives, which, I should mention, average between 70 and 80 of their years." Crixana made a sound that her species used to express complete cognitive overload. How are they not psychologically destroyed? Continuous consciousness for that duration would drive any concordant species into permanent neural collapse. "I don't know, but that's not what concerns me most." Velthorin pulled up one final data set. "Look at this. Their historical records, their art, their literature, the stories they tell about themselves." The display filled with images, paintings depicting scenes of carnage, beings in primitive armor hacking at each other with metal implements, photographs of vast armies arrayed across blasted landscapes, video recordings of explosions, of cities burning, of violence on a scale that made Crixana's bioluminescence fail entirely, leaving her in darkness. "They war against each other," she whispered. "Constantly. They have never stopped." Their entire recorded history is a chronicle of conflict. They have fought wars that killed millions of their own kind, hundreds of millions, and they continue to exist. They continue to build. They continue to advance technologically, even as they slaughter each other in numbers that would constitute extinction events for most species. Velthorin turned to face his colleague directly. Crixana, do you understand what we're looking at? These creatures have achieved industrial technology, nuclear technology, global communications networks, and preliminary space exploration capabilities, all while in a constant state of internecine warfare. They have developed weapons capable of sterilizing their own planet and chosen not to use them. They have reached the threshold of becoming a spacefaring species despite every obstacle, including themselves. We need to contact Concordance Central immediately, Crixana said. This isn't a standard first contact scenario. This is... I don't know what this is, but the Council needs to know. All of them, every species, everyone. Velthorin was already composing the priority transmission. He selected the highest urgency code available, a code that had not been used in 12,000 years, a code reserved for existential threats to the Concordance itself. As the message beamed across the light years toward the heart of galactic civilization, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the blue-green planet turn below them, watched the lights of cities flicker through the darkness of the night side, and tried to comprehend what they had found. Chapter 2: The Council. The Galactic Concordance Central Chamber had not seen a full assembly in over 3,000 years. Such gatherings were reserved for events of supreme importance: the discovery of new fundamental physics, the rare admission of new member species, or threats that endangered multiple civilizations simultaneously. Today, all 47 member species were present. Prime Arbiter Zelvos floated at the center of the vast spherical chamber, her crystalline body refracting the light of 1,000 holographic displays that surrounded her. As a luminari, she had been selected for her position precisely because her species was universally trusted. Beings of pure organized energy, they had no territorial ambitions, no biological imperatives that could bias their judgment, no interests beyond the harmonious functioning of the concordance itself. "This session is called to order," she announced, her voice carried through the chamber by quantum resonance rather than mere sound waves. "All representatives have received the data package from survey vessel Whisper of Stars. We are here to discuss the discovery of a new sapient species in Sector 7G, Outer Spiral Arm. The species designates itself Humanity, or Humans. The floor is open for initial responses." The first to speak was Ambassador Grethmore of the Collective, a hive mind species whose representative body was a carefully constructed amalgamation of specialized organisms. The Collective has analyzed the data 17,000 times. We have reached consensus on one point: these readings cannot be accurate. We formally request that a second survey vessel be dispatched to verify the findings. "Seconded," rumbled the massive form of Warlord Kraxel of the Wrath, his armored hide gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The biological data in particular defies everything we know about carbon-based life. No organism could function under such parameters." "And yet," interjected the wispy, ethereal form of Scholar Elindri of the Dreamers, "the data has been verified 17 times by the original survey team. The Luminari themselves have confirmed its accuracy through independent analysis. Whatever the implications, the data appears to be genuine." A murmur rippled through the chamber. a wave of sound and light and pheromone signals as dozens of species processed this information in their own ways. Prime Arbiter Zelvos raised a crystalline appendage for silence. The Luminari have indeed verified the data. We find no evidence of sensor malfunction, fabrication, or misinterpretation. The species designated as humanity appears to exist exactly as described. Then we face a more disturbing question, said Minister Velthax of the Merchants Guild, his species' natural gift for calculation evident in his rapid processing. If the data is accurate, how has this species not destroyed itself? Their population density alone should have triggered resource wars centuries ago. Their weapon capabilities should have resulted in extinction. Their psychological profile suggests extreme aggression and territorial behavior. By every model we possess, they should be extinct. More to the point, added High Commander Sixlar of the Concordance Defense Force, if they are not extinct, if they have somehow survived despite all factors that should have killed them, what happens when they become spacefaring? They are already on the threshold. Primitive chemical propulsion, orbital installations, robotic probes sent to other bodies in their system. Within a century, 2 at most, they will have functional interstellar capability. The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood the implications of that statement. "I propose immediate quarantine," Warlord Kraxel said. "The sector should be declared forbidden space. No Concordance vessel should approach within 50 light years. We monitor from distance and prepare appropriate responses." Appropriate responses, meaning military force, Scholar Aelindri said, her dreamlike voice carrying an edge of disapproval. You're suggesting we prepare to destroy them before they can reach us. I'm suggesting we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Look at their history. Look at what they do to each other. What will they do to us? We cannot know that, said the ambassador of the synthesis, a species that had achieved a form of technological immortality by uploading their consciousness into machine substrates. Their behavior toward their own kind may not predict their behavior toward others. Many species are more aggressive toward internal competitors than external entities. And many are not, Kraxel countered. The risk is too great. 8 billion of these creatures, building weapons, fighting wars, and now reaching toward the stars. Can you imagine what would happen if they achieved concordance-level technology? They could produce armies that would dwarf any force we could assemble. Their numbers alone make them a threat of unprecedented magnitude. Prime Arbiter Zelvos processed the arguments, her crystalline form flickering with internal light patterns that indicated deep contemplation. Perhaps we should hear from the survey team directly. Navigator Velthorin, Science Officer Crixana, you have studied these beings more closely than anyone. What is your assessment? The holographic images of the 2 surveyors appeared in the center of the chamber, transmitted from their vessel still orbiting the human homeworld. Velthorin spoke first. Honored representatives, I understand the fear that this data provokes. I share it. But in the course of our extended observation, we have discovered something that complicates the simple narrative of humanity as a threat. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Yes, they are violent. Yes, their history is drenched in blood. But they are also remarkable, in ways that the raw data cannot capture. Crixana took over. We have been monitoring their cultural output, their art, their literature, their music, their communications.
What we have found is a species at war not just with each other, but with themselves. They are aware of their capacity for destruction. They struggle against it constantly. Their entire civilization can be understood as an ongoing battle between their worst impulses and their highest aspirations.
"Show them," Velthorin said. "Show them what we found." The chamber's displays filled with new images. A human carrying another human from a burning building. Humans gathering in vast numbers, not for war, but for celebration, music, dance, shared joy. Humans building hospitals, schools, places of learning. Humans reaching up toward the stars with primitive but functional space stations. Cooperation between former enemies making it possible.
For every war they have fought, Crixana said, they have also created beauty. For every atrocity in their history, there is also an act of profound compassion. They are not simply violent, they are complex, contradictory, capable of both the worst and the best that sapient life can offer.
And perhaps most remarkably, Velthorin added, they know this about themselves. Their stories, their myths, their philosophical traditions, all of them grapple with this duality. They are a species that is conscious of its own nature and actively struggling to transcend it. This is unique in my experience. Most species either are not violent or are violent without self-awareness. Humanity is violent and knows it is violent and fights against that violence even as it commits it. The chamber was silent as the representatives absorbed this information. Finally, Scholar Elindri spoke. "What you are describing is a species in transition. Adolescent, perhaps, powerful, dangerous, but growing. If we were to make contact, might we not guide that growth toward peaceful ends? Or we might provide them with technology they would use to accelerate their violence," Craxel countered. "First contact protocols exist for a reason. We have never encountered a species like this before. We have no model for how to proceed." Prime Arbiter Zelvos made her decision. "We will continue observation for now. A dedicated research station will be established at safe distance from the human homeworld. We will gather more data, more understanding. And we will consult with the greatest minds of all our species to develop an appropriate strategy for eventual contact, if contact is deemed advisable at all. In the meantime," she continued, "I am invoking the Silence Protocol. No concordance vessel or communication will reveal our existence to humanity until we have reached consensus on how to proceed. They are on the threshold of becoming a spacefaring species. We must decide how to greet them, or whether to greet them at all, before they discover us on their own." The representatives signaled their agreement. The session adjourned. But as they filed out of the chamber, every one of them knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had discovered humanity. And the galaxy was afraid. Chapter 3. Observation. Research Station Vigilant Eye hung in the darkness between stars, its sensors trained on a single point of light that had become the most studied object in the entire galaxy. 50 light-years from Earth, it was close enough to gather detailed information, but far enough to remain undetected by humanity's primitive detection systems. Lead researcher Yirin Sol had dedicated the last 30 years of her life to understanding humanity. She had watched them through the vast distances of space, cataloged their behaviors, analyzed their culture, and slowly, reluctantly, come to a conclusion that she knew the Council would not want to hear. "They're accelerating," she said to her research team, gathered in the station's central analysis chamber. "Technological development is occurring faster than any model predicted. Look at these progression charts." The holographic display showed a series of curves representing technological advancement over time. The curves for typical concordant species rose gradually, plateau after plateau, each new technology building slowly on the foundations laid before. The human curve was different. It rose gradually at first, then began to steepen, and in the last few centuries of their recorded history, it had gone nearly vertical. In the span of 200 years, less than 3 human lifespans, they went from simple mechanical transportation to nuclear fission, computing technology, and preliminary space exploration, Uransol said. They have discovered and implemented more technological innovations in that period than most concordant species achieve in 10,000 years. Junior researcher Wexham, a young member of the same species as Uransol, studied the data with obvious concern. What's driving this acceleration? War, Uransol said simply. Their conflicts drive their innovations. Every major technological leap they've made has been connected to their wars in some way. Nuclear technology, computing, aerospace advancement, global communications networks, all of it either developed for or accelerated by military applications. That's terrifying. It is, and it isn't. Uransol pulled up a new data set. Because here's the thing about humans that we're only now beginning to understand. They don't just create technologies of destruction. They take their war technologies and transform them into tools for prosperity. She highlighted examples. Nuclear fission, developed as a weapon capable of destroying cities, now also used to generate power that supplies significant portions of their global energy needs. Computing technology, developed to crack enemy communications codes, now forms the backbone of a planetary information network that connects billions of beings. Aerospace technology, developed to deliver weapons across continents, now takes their explorers beyond their atmosphere to touch other worlds. They're adaptable, Wexham said, beyond anything we've ever encountered. They take the products of their worst impulses and repurpose them for their best aspirations. It's as if their violence is fuel for a larger engine, something that burns conflict and produces progress. The team fell silent, contemplating this. It was veteran researcher Thaxor, an elderly member of the synthesis species whose mechanical body had been upgraded countless times over his long existence, who finally spoke. I have been analyzing their information networks, he said, what you call their internet. It is extraordinary, and disturbing, and extraordinary. Could you be more specific? Imagine a repository of nearly all human knowledge, accessible to virtually any human with basic technology. Imagine that repository also contains their worst creative expressions, violence, hatred, cruelty, all of it mixed together, the brilliant and the base, the profound and the profane. And they expose their young to this from birth. That seems extremely dangerous, Wexham said. It is, and yet their society continues to function. Somehow they have developed cognitive filters that allow them to navigate this chaos without being destroyed by it. They call it critical thinking and media literacy. They teach it to their young as a survival skill. They have created a species-wide immune system against informational hazards, imperfect but functional. Uransol nodded slowly. Add that to the list. They're not just adaptable physically and technologically, they're adaptable psychologically. They can survive mental environments that would shatter other species. Which brings me to my most disturbing finding, Thaxor continued. I have analyzed their entertainment media, their stories. Do you know what genre is most popular among them? Horror? Wexham guessed. Violence? Both, yes. But also, and I cannot explain this, they have a vast body of stories about encountering other sapient species. They call it science fiction. And in these stories, they explore every possible outcome of such encounters. War with aliens, peace with aliens, alien invasion, human-alien cooperation.
They have imagined first contact scenarios thousands of different ways. They're preparing themselves, Yerensol realized, psychologically, culturally. They've been anticipating us.
For over a century, and more importantly, they've been debating the ethical implications. What rights would aliens have? How should first contact be conducted? What mistakes should be avoided? They've been having these conversations as a species, through their stories, without knowing whether they would ever be relevant. Yerensol sat back, her mind racing. The Council is debating whether humanity is a threat, whether they should be quarantined, or contacted, or dealt with. But humanity has been debating us, imagining us, preparing for us. And many of their imagined scenarios show them wanting peace, cooperation, the benefits of joining a larger galactic community. Many also show them conquering the galaxy through violence, Thaxor pointed out. Yes, because they imagine all possibilities. They consider all outcomes. They don't hide from the darkness in their own nature. They write stories about it, examine it, try to understand it. Yiren stood, decision crystallizing in her mind. I need to speak to the Council. We've been asking the wrong questions about humanity. What should we be asking? Not whether they're a threat. Of course they're a threat. Any species with their capabilities and numbers is a threat. The question is whether they're also an opportunity. And I believe they are. I believe they might be the greatest opportunity the Concordance has ever encountered. Chapter 4. The Signal. 6 months after Yerensol presented her findings to the Council, humanity took everyone by surprise. It was a routine observation shift when the signal appeared. A directed transmission, powerful and focused, beaming outward from Earth into the cosmos. It was not random. It was not their typical broadcast radiation leaking into space. This was deliberate communication, aimed at the precise coordinates where a gravitational anomaly suggested the presence of mass that humanity's telescopes couldn't directly observe. The transmission was mathematical, prime numbers, fundamental constants, universal physical relationships. And then, after establishing mathematical credibility, something else entirely. Symbols, art, a montage of human faces from every culture and ethnicity on their planet, a map of their solar system, images of their hands, five-fingered, soft, unarmored, raised in what their cultural analysis databases indicated was a universal gesture of peace and openness. And then words, translated into mathematical representation that any technologically sophisticated species could decode. We know you're there. We've known for some time. We see the shadows you leave, the traces of your observation. We don't know who you are or what you want, but we want you to know who we are. We are humanity. We are flawed. We are violent. We are afraid. We are also curious, creative, and hopeful. We have hurt each other throughout our history, and we continue to hurt each other even now. We are not perfect. We may never be. But we look up at the stars, and we dream. We dream of meeting others out there. We dream of learning, of growing, of becoming more than we are. We dream of peace. If you are listening, if you are watching, if you are afraid of us, we understand. We are sometimes afraid of ourselves. But we ask you to consider, every species must have a beginning. Every civilization must have a period when it was young and dangerous. We are young. We are dangerous. But we are also trying. We reach out our hand in friendship. We hope you will take it. The message repeated, cycling through variations, broadcasting continuously into the void. Research Station Vigilant Eye recorded everything. The transmission was immediately relayed to Concordance Central, and for the second time in less than a year, a full council assembly was convened.
Prime Arbiter Zelvos read the translated message aloud to the assembled representatives. When she finished, the chamber erupted in chaos. "They've detected us!" Warlord Kraxel thundered. "Our stealth technology was supposed to be undetectable." "Not detected," Scholar A. Lindry corrected, her voice carrying a note of admiration. "They've deduced. They saw the gravitational effects of our research station and correctly interpreted them as an artificial object. They're not as primitive as we assumed." "This changes nothing," Kraxel insisted. "If anything, it proves how dangerous they are. They're already showing technological intuition that exceeds our projections. We must act now, before they advance further." "And do what?" asked Ambassador Grethmore of the Collective. "Attack them? Destroy 8 billion beings because they sent a message of peace?" A message could be a deception. Their own history is full of examples of false peace offerings used to gain advantage before striking. Their history is also full of genuine peace offerings that led to lasting cooperation, lead researcher Urinsel interjected, her presence at this assembly a special exception granted due to her expertise. "We cannot assume deception any more than we can assume sincerity. What we can do is analyze the message itself." "And what does your analysis reveal?" Prime Arbiter Zelvos asked. Urinsal took a deep breath. The message is remarkable for what it includes. They acknowledge their own violence, their flaws, their capacity for harm. They don't pretend to be something they're not. They offer no false assurances, make no promises they might not keep. They simply present themselves, honestly, openly, completely. "Or they present what they want us to believe," Kraxel said. "To what end? If they wanted to deceive us, why not claim to be peaceful? Why not hide their violent history? They've given us access to their global information network. We can see everything, their wars, their atrocities, their failures. They've hidden nothing. That level of transparency is unprecedented." Minister Velthax of the Merchants Guild leaned forward. "I may have a different perspective to offer. In my species' long history of trade and negotiation, we have learned to read intent through action. Words can deceive. Behavior reveals truth." "And what does their behavior reveal?" "They detected our observation station." "They could have ignored us, pretended not to notice, continued to develop in secret while building weapons specifically designed to counter our technology. Instead, they reached out. They initiated communication. They made themselves vulnerable by revealing what they knew. These are not the actions of a species planning aggression. These are the actions of a species seeking connection." "Or the actions of a species testing our response before deciding on aggression," Kraxul countered. High Commander Sixlar, who had been silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. "Warlord Kraxel, I have spent my career analyzing threats to the Concordance. I have planned defenses against every conceivable enemy. And I must tell you, if humanity is the threat you believe them to be, we have already lost." Kraxel's armored hide rippled with surprise. "Explain." "Their population alone exceeds the combined population of the 12 most numerous concordant species. Their rate of technological advancement, if it continues, will see them achieve parity with our technology within a century and surpass it shortly after. Their psychological resilience allows them to withstand conditions that would destroy our warriors' morale. Their physical durability, while inferior to species like the Hrath in some respects, gives them regenerative capabilities that would allow them to absorb casualties we could not." Sixlar paused, letting the implications sink in.
If we choose war, we may win the first battles. We may win the first campaigns. But they will learn from each defeat. They will adapt. They will grow stronger. And eventually, they win. Because that is what they do. That is what their entire history proves. They face impossible odds, suffer catastrophic losses, and somehow, impossibly, endure and prevail.
Then what do you recommend? Kraxel asked, his voice subdued.
I recommend we do not make them our enemies, because if we do, we will eventually lose. And I recommend we do not wait to see if they become our enemies on their own, because the longer we remain hidden, the more they will distrust us when we are finally revealed. They have offered peace. We should explore that offer. It may be our only real option. The chamber fell silent. Slowly, the representatives began signaling their agreement. Even Kraxel, after a long moment of internal struggle, lowered his combat crest in acceptance. Prime Arbiter Zelvos spoke the words that would change galactic history forever. Prepare a response. We will answer humanity's message. We will meet them. And we will see what kind of future we can build together. Chapter 5. First Contact. The location had been carefully chosen. A point in space equidistant between Earth and the nearest Concordance outpost. Neutral territory where neither side would have advantage. The human ship was small by Concordance standards, carrying a crew of only 100. But it represented the culmination of humanity's greatest achievements in space technology. Aboard the Concordance diplomatic vessel, Bridge of Understanding, Ambassador Prime Velfax watched the human ship approach with a mixture of fascination and carefully controlled fear. Beside him, a delegation representing a dozen concordant species waited in similar anticipation. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer.
Accept the transmission.
The view screen filled with the image of a human. Female by their species' biological markers. Middle-aged by their standards. Her face was lined with what Velfax's briefing materials indicated were signs of stress and age. Proof that these beings carried the weight of their experiences visibly, physically, in ways that most concordant species found disturbing to contemplate. "I am Captain Maya Chen of the Earth vessel Hope of Tomorrow," she said. "On behalf of humanity, I thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Velfax activated the translation matrix and spoke. "I am Ambassador Prime Velfax of the Galactic Concordance. On behalf of the 47 species we represent, we welcome you to the community of civilizations." He had expected something. Fear, perhaps. Aggression. Arrogance. Some sign of the dangerous nature that had so concerned the Council. What he saw instead was unexpected. Tears. The human captain had moisture leaking from her optical organs, a physiological response to strong emotion, the briefing materials indicated. She was not sad. These were what humans called tears of joy. "You have no idea," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "how long we have waited for this moment. How many generations have looked up at the stars and hoped. We thought we might be alone. We thought the universe might be empty. And now—" She paused, visibly struggling to compose herself. "Forgive me. This is overwhelming." Velfax found himself moved in a way he had not anticipated. There is nothing to forgive. This moment is significant for us as well. The discovery of a new sapient species is always a cause for celebration. "May I ask,"
We've wondered, how many others are there? How many species in your concordance?
47. Soon, perhaps, 48. The human captain's face transformed with an expression that Velfax's briefing materials identified as joy. Pure, unguarded joy. 47. 47 different kinds of intelligent life. Different biologies, different cultures, different ways of seeing the universe. It's more than we dared to hope.
We hope that you will find a place among us, Velfax said. But I must be honest with you. There is concern about humanity among some of our member species.
Because of our history, Captain Chen said. It was not a question. Because of our wars, our violence, our capacity for destruction.
Yes, we've had the same concerns about ourselves. The captain's expression became more serious. Ambassador, we know what we are. We know what we've done. There's no point in hiding it. You've seen our broadcasts, read our histories, analyzed our entire civilization. You know the worst of us.
We do. But you're here anyway. You agreed to meet with us. Why?
It was the question the council had debated for months. Velfax gave the answer they had finally agreed upon.
Because we also know the best of you. We've seen your art, your music, your literature. We've watched you help each other, heal each other, love each other. We've observed your constant struggle against your own darker nature, and we've seen that struggle succeed more often than it fails. You are dangerous, yes, but you are also beautiful, in a way that challenges everything we thought we knew about sapient life.
Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion.
Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for looking past the horror and seeing the hope.
The question remains, Velfax said carefully, whether humanity can be trusted, whether joining the concordance would bring benefit to all or catastrophe. We can't promise perfection. We can't promise we'll never make mistakes, never fall back into old patterns. We're still learning. We're still growing. We're still struggling.
Then what can you promise?
Captain Chen straightened, her expression becoming resolute. We can promise to try, to keep trying, to take the best of what we are and use it to build something better. We can promise to learn from you, to share what we know, to contribute whatever we can to the community of civilizations. And we can promise that for every one of us who might threaten that community, there will be 1,000 who will fight to protect it.
How can you promise that? How can you speak for 8 billion individuals?
The captain smiled, an expression that Velfax found surprisingly warm. Because we know our own people. Yes, we have monsters. Yes, we have those who would destroy everything for power or profit or simple cruelty. But for every one of them, there are countless others who would oppose them. Our history isn't just a chronicle of war. It's a chronicle of people standing up against injustice, fighting for something better, refusing to let the worst of us define all of us. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. You've studied us. You know about our world wars, the most devastating conflicts in our history. But do you know what happened after them? We built international institutions to prevent future wars. We created systems of cooperation between former enemies. We stumbled, we failed, we had to start over again and again, but we never stopped trying to be better. Your species' resilience has been noted, Velfax acknowledged. It is perhaps your most remarkable characteristic. It's not just resilience, it's hope. We refuse to give up. On ourselves, on each other, on the possibility of a better future. Even when everything suggests we should. Maybe especially then. The captain paused, then added quietly,
That's what we can offer the Concordance. Not perfection, not guaranteed peace, but an unbreakable determination to keep fighting for what's right, even against ourselves when necessary.
Velfax considered this. It was not the answer he had expected. It was not a promise of safety or a guarantee of good behavior. It was something else entirely, something that felt more honest, more real than any diplomatic assurance could be.
"We would like to meet you face to face," he said, "to begin the longer conversation that first contact requires. Are you prepared for that?" "We've been preparing our whole lives," Captain Chen replied. "Every story we told about meeting others in the stars, we were preparing. Every time we looked up at the night sky and wondered, we were preparing. We're ready, Ambassador. We're ready to take our place among you." Chapter 6: The Years After. The integration of humanity into the Galactic Concordance was unlike anything that had come before. It was messy, complicated, and fraught with difficulty. It was also transformative in ways that no one, not even the most visionary of the Concordance's futurists, had anticipated. Humanity's first ambassador to the Concordance Council was a woman named Dr. Elizabeth Okonkwo, a diplomat and xenoanthropologist who had spent her entire career preparing for a job that had never existed before. She arrived at Central Station with a small team, a mountain of cultural exchange materials, and a determination to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The early years were challenging. Cultural misunderstandings were constant. Humanity's aggressive body language, eye contact, forward-leaning postures, broad gestures, was misread as threatening by a dozen different species. Their tendency to touch each other casually, to express emotion openly, to argue loudly and then reconcile quickly, confused observers accustomed to more reserved social norms. And then there were the incidents. 6 months after formal contact, a human merchant vessel was involved in an altercation with a Wrath trading convoy. The humans had been cheated. The Wrath had responded with threats, and within hours, a shooting war had nearly erupted. It took the combined diplomatic efforts of 3 Concordance mediators to prevent casualties. "This is precisely what we feared," Warlord Kraxul said at the emergency council session that followed. "They cannot control themselves. One minor dispute and they reach for weapons." But Ambassador Okonkwo had responded with something unexpected. "You're absolutely right," she said. "We reached for weapons. That was wrong. It was a failure of our training and our discipline, and it will be addressed." The human crew was recalled to Earth for retraining. New protocols were developed. Psychological support services were expanded. And when human vessels returned to active service, they were accompanied by dedicated conflict resolution specialists. "You admit fault," Scholar Aelindri observed during a private conversation, "openly, to your adversaries." "Is that unusual?" Okonkwo asked. "Among concordant species, yes. We prefer to manage diplomatic incidents through careful framing and mutual face-saving. Direct acknowledgement of wrongdoing is considered unsophisticated." Okonkwo laughed, a sound that Aelindri had learned to recognize as expressing genuine amusement rather than mockery. "We've found that pretending we didn't screw up just makes the next screw-up worse. Better to admit it, learn from it, and move on." "A philosophy forged in conflict," Aelindri observed. "A philosophy forged in survival. When you mess up as often as we do, you either learn to acknowledge it or you die." This approach, radical transparency, immediate acknowledgement of failure, rapid adaptation, became humanity's signature contribution to concordance diplomacy. Other species, accustomed to carefully managed interactions, found it disorienting at first, but they also found it strangely refreshing. When humans made mistakes, you knew about it. When they committed to change, they actually changed.
Their word, once given, proved surprisingly reliable, not because they were incapable of deception, but because they had learned that deception created more problems than it solved. And then there were the ways humanity changed the concordance that no one had predicted. The first human art exhibition at Central Station drew curious crowds from every species. What they found was unlike anything in Concord's history. Human art was not meant to be merely beautiful. It was meant to provoke, to challenge, to unsell. Paintings depicted the horror of war alongside the beauty of love. Music ranged from peaceful harmonies to aggressive rhythms that made some species physically uncomfortable. Literature explored the depths of evil and the heights of heroism, often in the same narrative. "Why do you create such disturbing works?" a luminary observer asked a human artist at the exhibition. "Because the darkness exists," the artist replied. "Pretending it doesn't won't make it go away. But looking at it, understanding it, confronting it, that's how we learn to overcome it." And the beauty? Why include beauty in works about darkness? Because hope exists too. Because even in the worst times, people are capable of love, of sacrifice, of transformation. Our art doesn't choose between darkness and light. It shows both. Because that's what life is, both. The luminary observer contemplated this for a long moment. Then, slowly, she said, "Among my people, we consider negative emotions to be imperfections, to be eliminated. We strive for pure, positive states. But you integrate negativity into your creative expression. You use it as fuel for growth. We don't have a choice. We can't eliminate our negative emotions any more than we can eliminate our need to breathe. So we learn to work with them, to transform them into something meaningful." It was a new perspective for the concordance. Many species had evolved to suppress or eliminate negative emotional states. Humanity's approach, embracing the full spectrum of experience and using it as raw material for creation, was alien in the truest sense, but it was also intriguing. Over time, other species began to experiment with human-style artistic expression. The results were tentative at first, but soon a new artistic movement spread through the concordance, one that explored darkness and light together, that found meaning in struggle rather than just in triumph. Chapter 7. The Challenge. 20 years after first contact, the concordance faced its greatest threat in millennia. A species from beyond the mapped galaxy, the Void Walkers, emerged from the depths of intergalactic space with technology that dwarfed anything the concordance possessed. Their demands were simple: submission or annihilation. The Council convened in emergency session. High Commander Sixlar presented the analysis, his voice grim. "Their vessels are larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything we possess. Their numbers appear unlimited. We have detected waves of reinforcements emerging from the intergalactic void on a continuous basis. Their communication intercepts suggest a hive mind structure with no individual consciousness, no concept of mercy, no capacity for negotiation." "What are our options?" Prime Arbiter Zelvos asked. "Flight or surrender. We cannot win a military confrontation." "We choose neither." All eyes turned to the human section of the chamber. Ambassador David Chen, son of the first contact captain, now the most experienced human diplomat in the concordance, stood with an expression that other species had learned to recognize as determination. "Humanity will not flee, and we will not surrender." "Ambassador Chen," Sixlar said carefully, "I understand the sentiment, but the mathematics are irrefutable. We cannot win." The mathematics said we shouldn't exist, Chen replied. They said we should have destroyed ourselves centuries ago. They said our planet couldn't support 8 billion people, that our psychology couldn't survive continuous consciousness, that our violence made us incompatible with civilization. Mathematics isn't destiny, it's a challenge.
Warlord Kraxul, who had become, over the years, one of humanity's strongest supporters in the Council, rumbled his agreement. I have fought alongside human warriors. They do not calculate odds the way we do. They do not accept defeat until defeat is absolute. And sometimes, impossibly, they find ways to win that we would never have considered.
What do you propose? Zelvos asked.
Everything, Chen said. Every resource, every species, every capability the Concordance possesses, unified under a single strategic command. Human tactical flexibility combined with Hrath durability. Luminary energy projection combined with collective distributed processing. Synthesis, technological integration combined with Dreamer psychological warfare. Every advantage every species brings, coordinated as never before. That would require unprecedented integration, Minister Velfax observed. Species would have to share technologies they have kept secret for millennia. Trust each other at levels that have never been achieved.
Then we achieve them now. We have no choice.
And if it's not enough, Sixlar asked, if, even unified, we cannot win? Chen's expression softened slightly, becoming something that the translators struggled to render. Sadness, perhaps. Acceptance. But also something else. Then we make them pay for every star system, every planet, every moon. We make them bleed for every victory until they wonder if the conquest was worth it. We become so expensive to defeat that they think twice about ever trying this again, with anyone. We may not save ourselves, but we might save whoever comes after us. The chamber was silent. Every species understood what Chen was proposing. Not a fight for victory, but a fight for meaning. A fight that might end in extinction, but would never end in submission. There is a human word, Scholar Elindri said quietly. Defiance. I have studied it for 20 years and never fully understood it until now. It's what we do, Chen said simply. It's what we've always done. When the universe tells us we can't survive, we defy it. When our own nature threatens to destroy us, we defy it. When the mathematics say we should lose, we defy them. We don't always win, but we always fight. But we always fight. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative. You took a chance on us. 20 years ago, when you had every reason to fear us, to destroy us, to quarantine us forever, you reached out instead. You gave us a place in the galactic community. You trusted us despite everything you knew about us. Now it's our turn to give something back. Now it's our turn to show you what that trust was worth. We will fight beside you. We will die beside you if we must, but we will not abandon you. Prime Arbiter Zelvos spoke the words that would commit the entire Concordance to the path ahead. We stand together. Humanity and the 47, a single civilization facing a single threat with a single purpose. Together, Chen agreed, for whatever that's worth. Together. Chapter 8. The War. The war against the Voidwalkers lasted 3 years and cost more lives than any conflict in Concord's history. But in the end, against all odds, against all reasonable expectations, the united forces of the 48 species prevailed. It was not a clean victory. Entire star systems were devastated. Species took casualties that would take centuries to recover from. The scars of the conflict would mark galactic civilization for generations to come. But they won. And in the aftermath, as the reconstruction began, something remarkable emerged. The unprecedented cooperation forged in the crucible of war did not dissolve when peace returned. Species that had shared technologies continued to collaborate. Cultures that had fought side by side found they had more in common than they had realized. The barriers that had kept the Concordance's members at arm's length began to crumble. At the center of this transformation, humanity played a role that seemed paradoxical to many observers. The species that had once been feared as the greatest threat to galactic peace became its strongest advocate. The warriors who had fought with terrifying ferocity in battle became equally passionate diplomats and peacemakers. The civilization that had spent its entire history at war with itself became the most enthusiastic proponent of interstellar harmony. "We've had enough war," Ambassador Chen explained to a Hroth journalist who asked about this transformation. "We fought it for millennia. We know what it costs. We know what it takes from you, even when you win. Every human alive carries the memory of our ancestors' conflicts. We carry their pain, their trauma, their loss. And we carry their hope, their desperate, stubborn, unbreakable hope that someday, somehow, we would find a better way." "And you believe you found it? Peace with other species?" "We found the beginning of it. Just the beginning. Peace isn't a destination. It's a practice. You have to work at it every day. You have to choose it over and over again when it would be easier to choose violence. We're not perfect at it. We never will be. But we're trying. And now we're trying together, with all of you." The journalist, a veteran of the Voidwalker War, bearing scars that would never fully heal, considered this. "Some of my people still distrust humans. They remember the fear before first contact. They wonder if you will turn on us someday when it suits your purposes." They're right to wonder. We might. In 1,000 years, in 10,000 years, something might go wrong. We might become the threat you once feared. Chen shrugged, a human gesture that conveyed acceptance of uncertainty. But we might not. We might build something lasting, something that grows and changes and adapts over the ages, a civilization that includes all of us, that's bigger than any one species. We won't know unless we try. "And you believe it's worth trying, despite the risk?" "Everything worth doing involves risk. The question isn't whether there's danger. The question is whether there's hope. And for the first time in human history, for the first time in the history of any of us, we have real hope for something better. We have proof that species as different as humans and Hrath, as strange to each other as Luminari and Collective, can fight side by side, work side by side, live side by side. If that's possible, what else might be possible?" Epilogue. The statue. 100 years after first contact, a monument was unveiled at the center of Central Station. It depicted a human hand reaching out, fingers extended in the ancient gesture of peace. Around it, the appendages of 47 other species reached back. Tentacles and claws and crystalline projections and energy fields, all converging on that single point of contact. The ceremony was attended by representatives of every concordance species. Speeches were made in 100 languages. Music played, created by composers from across the galaxy working in concert. Art was displayed, the product of countless collaborative projects that had blossomed in the century since first contact. At the base of the monument, an inscription read, "We came to you in hope and fear. We are still afraid of ourselves, of the future, of what we might become. But we hope more than we fear. And hope, we have learned, is enough. Hope, shared across the distances between stars, becomes more powerful than any force in the universe. Here is our hand. Take it, hold it.
Together, let us walk into whatever comes next. An ancient concordance proverb held that the measure of a civilization was not its greatest achievement, but its response to its greatest failure. Humanity had failed again and again throughout its history. It had committed atrocities that defied comprehension. It had come within moments of exterminating itself. It had done terrible things, and it carried the memory of those terrible things in its very cells, its very culture, its very soul.
But it had also kept going. It had acknowledged its failures, mourned its victims, and tried to build something better. It had reached out across the void with hope instead of hatred, with curiosity instead of conquest, with an open hand instead of a closed fist. The galaxy had frozen in shock when it discovered humanity, and then, slowly, it had thawed. It had learned that fear was not the only response to danger. It had learned that the most frightening species could also be the most inspiring. It had learned that the capacity for destruction and the capacity for creation could coexist, could even strengthen each other, in ways that challenged every assumption about sapient life. Humanity was still dangerous. It always would be. But it was also something else now, a symbol of hope, a source of inspiration, a reminder that even the darkest history could give way to a brighter future. The stars continued to shine. The civilizations continued to grow. And at the center of it all, reaching out with fingers spread in the gesture of peace, a single human hand connected the galaxy together. This was humanity's gift. Not perfection, but possibility. Not certainty, but hope. Not the absence of darkness, but the courage to face it together. And for the Galactic Concordance, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.